Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you. So we are here at Making Lemonade 2.0, co-organized by Goethe Institute, the Cultural Service of the French Embassy to Korea, Art Center Napi, and ARCO. This is day 2. First and foremost, we will hear a keynote speech, and I will be moderating the session. My name is Hong Kyung-han, art critic. So following yesterday, I am here again. It's a pleasure to see you. And the theme of the keynote conversation is examples to follow towards a fund in aesthetics and sustainability. And publicist and curator, artistic director, Ms. Adrienne Goehler, will now present. Then I will have a short discussion with Ms. Goehler. Ms. Goehler has joined us virtually, so now the floor is yours.
Hello, hello. Freigeben. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm quite excited because the Mala Stuckenberg, she was one of the first person making an international exhibition possible, and I'm very happy to share with you my insights. I started to work on sustainability within the arts in 2010, and this is the philosophy I would say I'm quite close to. He's an artist from Pakistan living in London. So art can and should strive for an alternative that is not only aesthetically affirmative and productive, but it is also beneficial to all forms of life on our planet. This is a very big task, but I think we cope with it. So just to give you some numbers, I started in a place which is not a gallery or a museum, but it is always my wish to open up the space for the arts. So I was in a bus deposit, and it is an absolute exception of the funding logic rule that I started a touring exhibition. I have been in 19 stations, but in Mumbai, only Mumbai was like 4 stations, because we have been in the museum, but also in the Goethe Institute and in 3 other galleries. I gathered now 128 artists from 27 nations. Actually, I'm working with 74 out of them. It was always integrated in the program, a dialogue among the sciences, the arts, but also, of course, the NGOs. And it is very important that we start that art is inviting people to talk and to cooperate. So the visitors is quite cool, and also the funders, because you cannot exist without them. And now these are foreign feathers, but I just want to clear up a bit the field we are living in. This is the wonderful Banksy. And this, of course, I'm standing with the exhibition and with all the important moves we did on very big and very important shoulders, such as Joseph Beuys as a pioneer, but also remember Gordon Mutterclark and Juan Downey. They made a performance in the year where the Club of Rome said, by the way, we have very limited space and our resources on the planet are very limited. Please take care. So art has been already so actual. And I like a lot that this was a reenactment from a young artist from Britain, and it was really cool. And when we have been in Beijing, it was stolen the very first day of the exhibition. Okay, and I cannot move now. What is... Somebody stopped me. And now I think I need... Okay. What can art do making invisible things visible? These are neons, yeah, second-hand neons, and you put them in a field under the electric lines, and you will feel that this is that electricity is falling down. This is, of course, coal, which is also very known in India for its problematic. And if you burn out this 3 cubic meters amount of coal, it is equal to streaming 1 million times the trailer of Avatar. So you are sitting in the internet, and of course it is disturbing our atmosphere and it is producing CO2. On the left side, you see 10 wonderful photographs from China. Here you see the gate of India, which is in proportion to the coal mine. And here you can see how the beautiful photos here on the left side are produced. This is the main electric garbage site in China. This is, of course, a very sharp reaction on that not only solar power helps you to survive us on the planet, it also has to have democracy aside. And a governor in Texas claimed for, let's have this power, the electric chairs powered by solar. She's an artist coming from the science, and she would go to all the nuclear power sites and look for what the beasts are doing. And here the little animals, Wanzen, bugs, I think you call them, they are all affected from the radioactive fallout. This was a last photo, what happened in Fukushima, it was the same. So they are not able to survive, of course. This is one of the most poetic artworks dealing with the climate change. This is from out of one form, and every little figure is melting in a very singular way. An old form how to clean water. First you have a felt, then you have stones, then sand, and then coal, and in the end you have a quite very good quality of water. This you might know, this was one of Halong Bay, was one of the first natural world monuments. And they kicked out the boat people who lived there since ever. And this is a digital coming back of the families and the boat people. Meanwhile, they are allowed again, but in the first time they were blocked because a natural monument should be natural. That was, of course, very stupid. An artist from Peru. Most of Peru depends from one glacier, and this glacier is in a very bad situation. So he was the and another, we were performing our exhibition in Lima when there was the World Conference on Climate in 2013. And this was not in 2014. And in 2013, there was a study saying that, of course, there's no justice in environmental rights, and the poor neighborhoods, they have no trees at all. So that was the action started by an artist to bring the plants to these places. A disciple from Beuys, having this climate change idea, bringing it to every place where climate change is provoked, so to politics, to industrial sites, and he is moving with all these little tents and blocking their entrances. This little instrument brought me to Ethiopia, because in Ethiopia you will never find constant electricity. So this is an unplugged pedal power washing machine, also allowed for man, if you can imagine. Dodi Reifenberg, an artist from Israel, he only works with plastic bags as his art material since 25 years. An artist from Argentina, this is in Mumbai, in front of, very close to the Goethe Institute, where he introduced a new currency. It is about time. What we need to live or to think about sustainability is, of course, time. A still life nowadays. This is Superflex, an art group that named, and they invented maybe probably the wonderful word, I am an artivist. So I'm an activist through the art. And under the very big impression of the flood in Pakistan in 2009, they flooded a McDonald's place to show how much they are responsible. McDonald's is responsible for all these weather problems. An artist from Mexico. He was also in Documenta, and he is coming from a place in Mexico where there's a lot of murder, a lot of guns, a lot of pistols. And he made an open call saying, bring this anonymously to a place and I will turn them into shovels to rebuild our country or reforest our country, which is one of the biggest problems in Mexico. An artist from Israel, you can read this as a work. All this is foam from military mattresses, but of course it is also a critique at the deforestation from Israel in the Palestinian occupied countries, territories. And this was under the impression of the big flood in and the murder and the murder and the dying in the Mediterranean Sea when the big migrant movement started. This is probably, and I'm not sure if I'm able to do that. Yes, I am able. Because this is the star among all the artworks I have, a breathing leaves. And of course, it's a beautiful picture, or a synonym for our fragile world. And how can I stop this? Yes. So this is, if you want to follow us, this is the exhibition examples to follow, expeditions in aesthetics and sustainability. And I showed you that because it is about the ability of humans to call new things into the world, which is highly and so necessary more than ever. I tried to deal with the sustainable development goals within the exhibition, and we are tipping at least at 10 points to show what is needed. And now I will just give you an idea. No, it was this before. I have an idea, I have a dream, and I'm fighting for it. And the precious resource of this fund for aesthetics and sustainability is that I gathered voices from artists and scientists and people in between the different fields to make strong the idea that we need a fund who helps us to clear so to clear through aesthetics and through the perception, which is different from knowledge. It is a cognition through body and soul experience. And this is what I'm fighting for unsystematic openness. I want to have a platform that we can meet. And I think it is a deep understanding that that everything is matching with everything, and we need a holistic perspective to survive. And I find it very cool when Alexander von Humboldt said, "Who does not love nature cannot explore it." So this is what the fan is about. And I think we need to tear down the borders between the different knowledges, artistic, scientific, and activist knowledge. And I think we need different approaches to make a cultural production, presentation, and distribution really sustainable. We need other terms, and we need to talk about material and how much we need in material. But I think more than talking about material and having, I don't know, reasonable slimlining our productions, we need to discover the capacity of the arts to be a major important part of the transformation. This is also an act. It's 120 kilos being in the water of Bilbao. And of course, half of the people hate it and half of the people love it. And I don't think we can return to normality after all the crises, the multiple crises we are living in. We need also, and this is I know we cannot talk about it, but to be really sustainable in this we can do, we need to have a basic income. And I'm very happy that the United Nations development, I'm an activist and a writer about basic income since a long time, but it starts to be one of the most important ideas. And the president of the Basic Income Earth Network now is a person from India, and the chair, and it is very important movement in the world. So I was writing a book, and you can have it for free, and it shows the triangle between sustainability, deceleration we need, and a basic income, which I more and more consider as a livelihood and not as a form of income. That was it. I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope it was not too long. Thanks.
네,
Thank you very much, Ms. Goehler, for the keynote speech. I have a few questions in mind, and I prepared a few questions, but instead of reading them through, I would like to ask you spontaneous questions. So first off, we have many emergencies, including the climate change, And globally, as you shared with us in Vietnam and Beijing and many other countries, artists are speaking up about the climate emergency. But on the other side, this is what comes up to my mind. So no matter how much artists work hard to create their own work and to make them as much eco-friendly as possible, at the end of the day, the government, the schemes, the policy, as well as the high-level policy should change, because otherwise, the activities of the artist will be restricted. And you have been in this field for a very long time, so what's your take on that? I believe that we need to make some improvements of that side, that high-level side. What's your point? What's your take on that?
I think what the goal, let's say the goal or the capacity or the commitment and the possibility of the arts is to touch, to show the emotional side, the physics side of all the change we have to be aware of. So, and we should not struggle apart. But what I'm dreaming of is that we have teams where artists are very clearly involved. If we think about how to change a neighborhood in order to be more helpful to the environment, then we should work in teams. Then we should consider that art has a very specific part to give and aesthetics is of course the perception through the senses. So what we are dealing with in the arts is with all the senses, looking, smelling, tasting, and feeling. And that is the precious offer we can give to a common struggle.
네,
Yes, I do agree with you. So we, of course, work on an individual level, at an individual level, but then if we can interact with others and form a network, then we can maybe come closer to achieving the goal. And you talked about the specific platform towards the end of your presentation. If only we had that platform, it would help us achieve our goals, and that will act to our benefit.
I'm absolutely convinced that we need a collaboration between the arts and the science and the knowledge. We gathered worldwide in the movements, in the social movements, but we have no space until now where art and science can meet, because all the demands are totally different. But more and more you meet artists and scientists who feel very uncomfortable in their silo, in their little moving space. They want to collaborate. They know that we need to bring all our knowledge and our empathy together. And this is where we need a fund for, that we can have the time, because normally artistic funding is like you have for 2 or 3 months, you have something, and then you apply for again and again. And it has always been totally new and never seen, which of course is very stupid. Korea will be the first country. I am happy to give all my knowledge, and Korea starts with the Fund for Aesthetics and Sustainability. That would be cool.
네, 우리
Yes, Korea has many funds, and compared to the past, I think that we benefit from diverse funds. However, many of the funds are one-off time funds, and they do not continue for a long time. So the fan fund that you talked about, if it can contribute to the Korean art community, I am sure that we will be willing to receive and be part of that fund as well. I look forward to that day. Climate change as well as environment are some of the topics that artists look into and explore. And as we speak, they're working on those themes. I talked about policies and schemes, but on the other side, there is this as well. So we live in a capitalist world and we consume a lot and we seek consumerism. And because of that, there is a wall that we cannot surpass. And the overproduction, which is the outcome of capitalist society, well, we live in that society, but then can art still exist in this world? Is that only in our heads, in our imagination, or is it feasible? What's your take on that?
Well, in one way, art is the same product of capitalism like we have in other goods. More and more you find art in the big market, in the big shows, in the big... So I'm not interested in this part. Therefore, the last slide I showed and where I said, okay, I will not have the time in the 20 minutes to explore that. But as I'm deeply convinced that we have to change our life radically. And it will be an anti-capitalistic move we have to do, because capitalism that we understand now is exploiting the planet to its death. So capitalism is the actor who kills capitalism in the moment because they exaggerate it. So if we would touch a basic income, I'm very sure that also our consumerism, which is a result of being frustrated, of being not part of the biggest people, of the rich and mighty. So you start to consume also because you are frustrated with your job, with your living conditions. I mean, housing, living is so expensive and so unreachable for so many people that with a basic income, I think we could really start to be sustainable and also develop a new sense of what life can be about. How is what in South America there is a wonderful, it's even in the Constitution, it's about the pursuit of happiness, and it is also bon vivere. So how do we live in a decent way that is in accord with nature and not dominating nature, not exploiting nature. And therefore we have a radical move. And I think art is always prepared to discover new things, to take the question from the head to the foot and the other way around. I think we are really, really good prepared in helping to make the transformation true. But we need a platform. We need funds. We need the space to interact with the different spheres of knowledge. And this is what I'm fighting for. Okay?
Yes. So your comment makes me understand a lot, and I do agree with you. So we live in a world of capitalism, and we consume so much, and we throw away so much, and artists need a platform, and they need to be more radical, and the platform can serve as a center, a hub that attracts all the artists at the same time. We also need funds, and artists should be ready all the time. I very much agree with you on that. I have one more question. During your presentation, you talked about science and art. Well, it is my understanding that we need to link art and science. How can we do so? What are some of the approaches or methodologies that can be applied here? It can sound quite abstract, so can you please give us a few case studies or examples?
Yeah, I was fellow 2 years in an institute for advanced sustainable studies, and you could feel that the scientists, they suffer so much about because the lack of imagination. They say, okay, we have a lot of proofs, we have a lot of dates, we have a lot of facts, but people are not involved emotionally. So what we need, for instance, we started to make a rally with little cars for kids, but we blow them up in a big, and then we made a demonstration. So that kids start to enter the demonstration because they felt like in a magic surrounding, and we started to have extremely a lot of fun, to be honest. And this is what I think we have. Art and science both want to leave the prison they are in, and we need to combine the people who want to escape from their old methods, the people who want to mingle in order to make experiments. I think this is also true in the moment. We have more question marks than answers because everything the capitalism was based on is eroding. All the 100% certainties are falling apart. So what we need, and this is what the common good of sciences and arts is, being able to question, being able to say, oh, this was an error, and learning from the error. This is what neither economy nor politics usually do, to say, this was an error. And to make an error productive and to try to come out of situations, because we need to bring together different perspectives. This is what can be fruitful. And for instance, you ask for another example, the sheep. We have in East Germany, where I'm living. Berlin is part of East Germany, as you know, former East Germany. And Berlin was surrounded by sheeps. And since 30 years, the wool of the sheep is thrown away. In former RDR times, the wool was equal to half a monthly income of one sheep. So what now we are starting very early in the process, but scientists, biologists, artists, no, not engineers who work with acoustic, you could start to have acoustic panels done by the wool of sheep. So instead of having, again, big artificial things, you could start with wool. And this is what we are examining in the moment. And the sheep wool is a very, it has like 120 possibilities of communicating. It is a very important, the oil of it, the grease of it is very important for us, so many things. And this is what we start. Very often, you just need to go back to old culture techniques. What I showed with the water, cleaning the water through a felt, through stones, through sand, through coal filter. You can have an impact, and you have better water. This is what you can do, but you need to be. I think art is also the the place where all the technical, um, um, the idea that we only need better techniques and then the world is saved. It's not. So we don't have it. So that is, yeah, this is what we understand now, that we need to go back to the history, understanding. For instance, in Germany, it was very clear for a long time. You eat once a week meat, Sunday, and the rest people were too poor. Animals were there to work and not to be eaten, and things like that. I think this is, we need a new narratives. I'm talking about plural, not singular. Plural. We need new narratives, and there the impact of the arts is amazing. So give this to your politician to create a room, a space for possibilities, and then we will have a lot of different ways to go out of the big multiple crisis we are in. And maybe one sentence which is on a bit on another level, but all the theaters, all the operas, all the filmmaking institutions, they should contribute in a hall where we install all the material. The material is usually thrown away. So every city should have how the word is a terminal where you put all the material in and people can take it out. Schools, private households, whatever. So we need to reuse material and not to throw it away.
If only we had more time, I would be willing to discuss 1 hour or 2 hours, because what you're saying is so interesting. So which direction to follow? I think you gave us a hint. And if we could watch this presentation once again, it will help us so much going forward. But then, unfortunately, we're pressed for time. So I would like to wrap up the keynote conversation. I look forward to another occasion to speak with you.
And the presentation is free. I mean, I just give it to Goethe Institute, and they can do whatever they want to do with it. I mean, I'm confident that they do the right thing with it.
감사합니다.
Okay, we look forward to seeing your presentation material. So thank you very much, Adrienne, for your presentation and
감사합니다.
talk. Thank you.
자,
So that brings an end to the keynote conversation with Miss Goehler. I know that we are behind time, but we have a panel discussion, artist performance, as well as showcase number 2 coming up. So please stay with us until the end of the conference, because we have a lot to present. And thank you very much for staying with me. Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I could not locate the microphone, but now I have it with me. This event is streamed live on YouTube, and we are also here in person at Goethe Institute in Korea. Making Lemonade 2.0 is a program jointly organized by ARCO, the Nabi Art Center, Goethe Institute, and the Cultural Service of the French Embassy to Korea. It's a pleasure to see you all. And recently, Anthony Sargent's report titled COVID-19 in the Global Cultural and Creative Sector mentioned this. As always, amongst the loss and damage, there has been invaluable learning of new kinds of thinking, new ways of doing things. We need to identify all those new learnings around the world, then build on those new foundations rather than just reassembling the broken pieces from the past. In this sense, Making Lemonade serves as an important occasion to learn about the imagination and experimental spirit and courage to take action of artists who were forced to shift course because of the pandemic. We just heard from Ms. Goehler, who talked about unsystematic openness and art, activism, and science that should go hand in hand. And in that sense, this session is to talk about activism in art in the context of climate action. We have with us two speakers. So first, we will talk about climate change. So what is the role of art in responding to the climate crisis? Does art even play a role in changing perceptions? Or should it be activism that guarantees practice? What are the boundaries? What role can the innovativeness of technology play in the climate crisis and the art? Artists and artwork still need to be moved toward and distributed, but what exactly is the mobility of eco-friendly art? There are some questions. These are some questions we will discuss. First, let me introduce the first speaker, Ms. Jade Keunhye, Journal Director of the ARCO Art Center. Under ARCO will speak. She was originally scheduled to attend in person, but joined virtually due to a schedule conflict with the Venice Biennale. So let us watch her video first. Hello, everyone. So I'm here at Korea's Pavilion of Venice Biennale. It's a pleasure to see you all, and I have a video that will replace my presentation. So let us watch that first, and then I will join you for the panel discussion.
안녕하세요. 저는 한국
Hello, everyone. I am Jade Lim from the ARCO Art Center, which is run by Arts Council Korea, ARCO. It is a pleasure to meet you at the Making Lemonade conference. Before we engage in the discussion on the role of art in climate action, allow me to briefly introduce the programs ARCO Art Center organized in response to the pandemic. Since April 2020, right after the novel coronavirus outbreak was declared a global pandemic, the center has organized exhibitions and public programs to develop new exhibition agenda and create discourses around current social issues and encourage action of the art community. First and foremost, ARCO Art Center selected usefulness, inclusion, collaboration, and sharing as the 4 keywords that will guide us and laid out future plans accordingly. To be more specific, the 4 keywords can be rephrased as enhancing the social role of art museums, strengthening inclusive and eco-friendly practices, diversifying collaboration across disciplinaries and regions, and spreading a culture of sharing and communication. The center also designed an arithmetic symbol to represent these concepts. The recent programs of the center are aligned with these visions and strategies. The first exhibition I would like to introduce is Sush Tutpu by Hongyi Hyunsuk. Here, sush is a mimetic word that refers to the sound of something blowing in the wind And chupu refers to the sound of something hitting something. The title already suggests the determination to overcome the modern dichotomy of human versus non-human by using the sound and senses of the body rather than the language of humans, and sends the message that we wish to communicate equally with non-humans. The sounds of whales with a hearing range beyond that of humans and stray cats living in the alleys of redeveloped neighborhoods fill the exhibition hall. The artist recognizes the existence of non-humans that share our community and spaces and unfolds the imagination of swimming and flying together. This made us realize that the suffering of animals can be a crisis to all of us. 정제철's For Love and Peace introduces a major project of the late artist who passed away in 2020. Through travel, the artist blurred artificial boundaries and showed a postmodern view in which countries and cultures, humans and nature are connected and integrated. Jung travels along the Silk Road with waste banners, a symbol of overproduction and consumption, and recycles them as car shades and clothes. Jung also names plastics washed up on the shores not as discarded waste, but as floating marine products, thereby giving them new meanings and functions. In short, Jung practices and leads a life that challenges the consumption-led global capitalist system. The final program of last year, Nothing Makes Itself, was an exhibition that dealt with the relationship between humans and the environment, which was redefined by the pandemic. The program attempted to connect social agenda with art and technology by using visual arts. And we tried to ride along the trend, but at the same time, the center makes sure to use artistic expression and technology as a medium to awaken a new sense and awareness of how individuals, society, and the environment are connected, rather than using the themes as a mere source of entertainment or one-time experience. Part 1 of the online symposium, conducted in conjunction with the exhibition, was held under the theme of expanding artistic imagination with technology in the time of climate crisis. And the artists, the researchers, as well as the activists of climate change and organizers came together to talk about the value of art and culture, and introduce various activities designed to restore the damaged earth, centering on the value of art in the context of climate justice and action. The International Council of Museums predicted that 13% of museums around the world, including art galleries, would permanently shut down due to the pandemic. This projection pushes us to rethink the meaning of the museum's existence from ground zero. The center's programs demonstrate our own reflection with respect to the legitimacy of art creation and exhibition in an era of climate crisis and the reason for the existence of the museum. It is a pleasure to meet people from various fields working for a common cause. I look forward to learning from you. Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation, Jade. You talked about how art museums plan programs to tackle climate change and how you not only use that as a mere source of entertainment, but plan very sustainable programs. Now, moving on to the next speaker, we have with us International Commissioner, Media Artist, and Curator of Dongyang Triennale, Mr. Daniel Kapelian. The floor is yours.
Hello, good evening. 안녕하세요. Thank you for inviting me. I'm part of Oma Space Studio, which is a studio based in Seoul. And at the beginning, we started with textile. We're a textile-based studio. And I'm partner with a Korean artist, Jung. She's the founder of the studio. So we are doing many different things. In the beginning, they used to do some garments and with very organic and materials. And then we switched to contemporary art and design, immersive installation, and different, type of new expression. So in the studio, we are working with very primitive techniques, and also we are blending this with digital tools. In our creative process, we try to maintain sustainable coexistence between humanity and nature. And I don't know if we are artivists or activists. I don't know. We are very humble on this point because we are a very small studio. We don't have a big impact, but we are doing things at our scale. And we have two different approaches to deal with the ecology and environmental problems today. So the first one is related to what the previous speaker was saying about looking and finding new materials in the past. So we call this sourcing the future in the past. And it's very important for us because we are dealing with a lot of small networks of providers for textile. And we started a movement 2 years ago called the hemp movement in Korea. You know that hemp, the culture of hemp, is forbidden since the dictatorship in the 80s in Korea. And so it's very difficult to grow hemp and to transform hemp into many different things. So hemp today is part of a global movement, worldwide movement, because it's a very important material in terms of sustainability. You can make some fuel, you can make construction, you can make fabrics, you can make paper, you can make a lot of things with hemp. At the beginning of the 20th century, Henry Ford, the founder of Ford Automotive, was saying that the hemp was an essential material for the Industrial Revolution. But he has to fight against the lobby of the oil and the steel, and he lost. He lost his fight. But now there is a big new revival of hemp. Hemp is not only the only product and material we are interested in. We are interested also by mushrooms. Mushrooms are very important for medicine, are very important to clean toxic waste, and are very important also for the food. Wood is there is a new way to grow wood today and to use wood. There are many different, well-known materials that are not developed in a right way today. But there is a new generation of makers, creators, artists, scientists, and industrial who are looking in a new direction today, which is very important. The second part of our approach of the ecology is not the ecology in a sense, in a common sense. We believe in the ecology of the mind because there is a lot of confusion today. We are living a very critical time. We have war going on. We had COVID for 2 years, but the main priority is climate change, and it's not on the top of a calendar. If you check the French election next weekend, the two candidates, they don't talk too much about ecology, and France is about at the verge of becoming an extreme right country, which is a real pity, and which it will be very damaging for the ecology as well. So the ecology of the mind is based on a very simple statement. We believe that if we want to fix the world, we need to fix ourselves first. So this is what we can do at our scale. So in our work, we are making immersive installations. The picture you can watch now is an installation called Tree of Light. It was produced by Google in 2019. We won a call for project for a new technology developed by Google, new textile technology. And our idea is to put people in a way to reconnect with themselves, because there is a big disruption with ourselves. We are very busy and our mind is very vacuumed by the outside with a permanent interaction with a mobile device and internet, and a very strong dynamic to be completely out of our mind. So our work with our installation, immersive and meditative installation, is to bring back the people for a moment of recollection, moment of reconnection. Because if we are disconnected from ourselves, we are completely disrupted with nature, which is a big problem today. Man is not part anymore of the nature. We have excluded ourselves out of nature. So we are trying to, give the people the possibility to cultivate their consciousness, to expand and elevate their state of mind, and to bring some inspiration to the people. And we have different installations to do that. This one, you had people going inside this kind of temple. There was a big spiral inside it, and you can see that around and inside this temple there are some steps, interactive steps. So it was a 15-minute experience, and I can tell you that all the people who made this experience in Paris during the FIAC, they came out totally transformed. Not completely transformed, but just a little degree, to elevate a little bit their mindset. So this is what we think, that we need more clear minds and wise people now to interact and to work together. We believe into a big crossover. She was talking, the president speaker was talking about art and science. So I'm really advocating for the crossover of all the different type of expression, and not only art and science, but many different things today. I'm a strong believer in technology, even if I work with very organic and clean material. That was the inside of the temple, so people, to get a loss of bearing in time and space for 15 minutes, turning in spiral inside this temple. This is a new installation we are having at the Hyewon resort in Korea. This is an isolation capsule, so people can sit, and the dome is going down upon them, and for 5 minutes people can experience a deprivation, sensorial deprivation. They can see nothing, they are totally in the dark, and they experience a sonic moment with a special soundtrack in it. Beside of my activity with the studio, I'm currently the international commissioner, art director, and curator of the Tongyong Triennale, the main event of the Tongyong Triennale, which is called The Sea, The Seeds. The sea is because Tongyong is living, close to the ocean, and that's the source of life. So the Triennale is really about protecting the sea. And the seeds, because this is the first edition of the Triennale, and I said, well, I'm coming like a gardener, and I want to sow some seeds for the future, seeds of art for the next generation in 3 years from now. The main exhibition of the Triennale is called Take Your Time. So this is a very important subject for me related to the ecology of the mind, because we are living now what we call a temporal explosion. Temporal explosion is an exponential acceleration of time. As I was saying before, we are living in a very interactive and constant dynamic with permanent information. So we don't have time for ourselves. And this lack of time undermines completely our capacity to face the future collapse. We need more time to think about it and shape good ideas and good form for the future. So the show is under title Sourcing in the Past, Minting the Present, Shaping the Future. So we explore in this show a large range of different art expression. It starts from craft, it starts from fine art from the 19th century, and floor by floor, there are 6 floors in the building. Floor by floor, we are going to digital arts, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, robotic, neurodesign, which means that you can design today, you don't use your hand to design, but you just use your mind. And of course, it's associated with all the movement on blockchain and NFTs. So I can show you a little trailer, 1 minute trailer of the show, if it works. Yes. Just one more thing, there are 38 artists from 13 different countries in the show. The show lasts until May 8 in Tongyong, so if you have the chance to go to Tongyong, it's a beautiful place. It's a very instructive exhibition. And you know, the statement of the exhibition is art is what is making life more interesting than art. So you can replace the word interesting by a lot of words. Thank you.
고맙습니다. 5월
Yes,
통영
thank you very much. So the Tongyang Triennale will be open up to May 18th. So please take your time and visit Tongyang. As artists, the scope of activism, the humanism and naturalism should come together to create new materials, and then you inject imagination so that we can act on what we believe in. And you talked about ecological mind and do it yourself. So it's about changing your own mindset and perspective. So thank you very much for that very meaningful message. The two presenters were talked about visual art, so I will briefly talk about the performance art scene. I have some presentation slides ready, and I would like to briefly talk about climate crisis and transformation in performing arts. Can we go to slide number 2? This project is a 3-year research project, and we embarked on this 3-year research after witnessing how the rapid changes in technology, society, and environment in the 21st century have had a great impact on the creation, production, circulation, and consumption of performing arts. So we focused on the mobility of artists. That is the research question of this study. And this was co-planned by 3 different organizations. So CAMS Connection Research Project of Korea Arts Management Service, the PAM Salon, and Seoul Performing Arts Festival. It not only talks about climate change, but also the challenges of the time and the role of art. The art scene needs to become more eco-friendly. So concept touring is a topic that we deal with. So it's not about moving the artwork to overseas. It's about engaging in international exchanges and about taking new approaches by interacting with local artists. And number 2 is green production. So if we were to move artwork, then how should we move such artwork? And last but not least, we also deal with technology, digital technology, and mobility. And I talked about the key questions, so I will skip this. And I would like to briefly go over some of the case studies. The first one is this artist residency climate change. And this is an on and offline residency that took place. And participating artists conducted individual research and individual work, and they share information, knowledge, and inspiration with each other. So it's not just about Seoul and Korea, it's about learning from global perspectives and sharing such knowledge. So in collaboration with PAMS, we plan to meet the audience, and the residency has also joined hands with SPAF and will create follow-up work. The next project is Elephant Taxi, and it's to make sure that climate crisis is no longer viewed as an elephant but a topic to discuss openly. The expression "the elephant in the room" is a term that is used to describe a very wrong challenge or issue that everybody knows but no one mentions as it cannot be solved. It is a term used in psychology. So how artists should deal with this elephant in the room was the core topic of this project. It's about reducing carbon footprint and creating artwork in that context. If you visit the link, you can find more details. And I talked about next mobility, and I would like to share a few findings with you of our project. So first, I talked about green production, digital innovation, concept touring, and so on. And there were 3 areas that we needed to focus on. First, we need a shift of perspective. As Daniel mentioned, this is not just a tool or trend. So climate change should go beyond that. We need to change our perspective. And that is the approach that we need to take. And number 2, we talked about unsystematic openness, which means that we need a fresh form of aesthetics and forms of art. And we need to explore such new forms and avenues. And when it comes to consuming as well as producing and distributing art, the entire ecosystem needs to change to really make a difference. And in that sense, what is happening in the performing art scene are as follows. First is green production. I will talk about this later on in detail, but it's about to be eco-friendly when creating artwork. Concept touring, I already gave you an explanation of that. And green mobility is this. Of course, artists should still move, but then how to move by reducing carbon footprint and more eco-friendly, in a more eco-friendly manner. And at the same time, when moving, we need to make sure that our interactions are more dense. By that I mean that we need to interact closer with the local artists. And these are some of the methodologies that we have started to apply. Now this green production campaign and green policy are some of the initiatives that we have kicked off to show our commitment. And we also have this Green Art Lab and a Green Writer, a green book for the green production. We also have sustainable books, and we also have a Green Alliance, which talks about how policies should change and how artists can move online. So I briefly talked about the changes that are happening in the performing arts scene, the green mobility and green production. Then we are pressed for time and we are very much behind time, but still I would like to conduct a panel discussion about Artivism, which is a combination word of art and activism. Now I will speak in English.
We have a panel discussion. So I think first question we would like to discuss about the role of art on climate crisis. So what will be the role of art in climate crisis and environmental sustainability? We artists, curator, producer have an environmental responsibility. But there are many ways art can contribute to bringing awareness of the climate crisis through the artwork. But at the same time, the art should guarantee practice as activism. So we would like to talk about what will be the role of art. Some people, the role of art is a suggestion or a question. Some people, without action, that's not actually not beneficially for climate crisis. So there is a lot of debates going activism. So I think first of all, Jade in Venice, what do you think about the role of art?
네,
So art is not about persuading or explaining. It triggers our imagination so that our senses are awakened. And that is the role of art. And with the pandemic, we finally understood that the climate crisis has long neglected the importance of art. And I believe that we must use art to reflect on humans, who we are. And as I mentioned, well, we talked about some of the exhibitions that we opened and organized, and we dealt with nature. And I believe that can be an
Agree. I mean,
to
the
play.
artistic imagination that's actually give people kind of social change. Some people say it should be radical, political, scientific. So, what do you think, and Daniel, about that?
Well, I think, art come always in a context, and in a context you come with an intention. So, of course, art today has to be political because there is a failure of the politician today regarding the climate change. It's obvious. But I just want to be, a little bit cautious about art because what are we talking about? Art is a market. And the people who are speculating on the market today, it's a very high market, very profitable market. And all these people who are buying and selling, they don't care much about climate change, to tell you the truth. So which art are we talking about? The woman who precedently speakers, or all the different institutions or festivals who are really aiming to change something in this world. So let's take an example. I want to take an example. There is in digital art, there is the biggest festival called Ars Electronica in Linz in Austria, and the thematic of this year is Planet B. So it's all about the possible change we can make, to face the crisis today and to find solution. So it's a very interesting thematic because it's not only the carbon print of the event, because the carbon print of the event is taking in account, so people behave in a certain way and they recycle all the thing in a certain way. But it's also the mix of people they are bringing together, the crossover again of people they are bringing together to bring solutions. So I believe that art today can be a very good translator of a very good new initiative and idea to touch the public, because there is no really touching message about what's going on. We can see a lot of picture of the disaster, but we don't see very much information. We don't get very much information about all the solution and all the alternative and all the people who are fighting for it. You know.
Thank you. I mean, I agree. I mean, there are many different role of art also in the art. So there is no one solution. But as Jade told about, the power of art is sort of imagination, touching, emotional awareness. That's sort of important. So let's talk about, so there are different way of approach, depends on your art. And so is there any good example, I mean, a solution we can share? So in consideration, environmental issues and a climate crisis. For example, Daniel just mentioned the Planet B project. Jade, from your perspective at your museum, or so a different way of approach and a good example, can you share?
네,
Yes, I did talk about imagination, but of course, in the visual art scene, we talk a lot about very specific action plans. And I talked about some of the projects that we have, and there was this Zero Collective, and it talked about veganism and that new trend. Now, I would like to briefly talk about that because it talks about some of the options that make us less indebted to the planet. And we talk a lot about, and it talks a lot about many approaches and methodologies that the art scene can take. For example, it proposes some materials that are very eco-friendly, some vinyls, or instead of some materials that we often use, maybe use recycled forms or eco-friendly packages, and maybe use modular walls to hang artwork, and what types of paper we use, what can we do to minimize paper use. And it talks about Eco Punch as well, and you can actually download the 77-page long booklet, and with that it talks about very different methodologies. So this program is titled Nothing Makes Itself, and I briefly mentioned that in my presentation, and we are trying our best to apply this across our work.
You mentioned the Planet B project. So in the issue of the climate crisis changes, many people believe technology, new innovation contribute to reduce carbon footprint and also new way of approach. Do you agree about that? How technology contributes on climate crisis issue in making or creation of the art? Also, many people now using the NFT. That's also technology innovation. So do you think, I mean, that's really big contribution for the future?
Well, once again, you know, what are we talking about the NFTs? You know, there was a big controversy with the NFTs. Like, first, NFT is not art in the sense it's just a medium, one more medium to contribute to art and to display art, to sell art, to mint art, whatever. But NFT by itself is just a medium. So it was a very pollutive medium on the blockchain, because I'm not going to enter into technological consideration, but the system improved, so there are less and less working with less consumption of electricity today. So the impact of the new technology, of course, we need new technology to advance, because I'm not saying that we should make a a stop on the new technology. And you know, the fact that we have data today is very important. Data and artificial intelligence can help us to consider a point of view and find solutions that you know, the human mind cannot process at the same speed and such a quantity of information. So we can make regroupment of information, intersection of different flux of information that are completely unexpected and really help us to understand what's going on. You know, this is the best way we can use the technology. Of course, technology depends on the use you're making of the technologies, you know, so I think there is a very positive use of it. Yeah, of course, I'm a strong advocate for that. Yeah.
Yesterday, Rimini Protocol explained about their production of a conference of the absent. How did they make the show why ecological approach? So same way in performing art, I mean, there are many ways people using digital technology in creation in terms of physical, digital, hybrid way. And before is international co-production, a lot is actually physically there, I mean, to create. But these days, in the process and using Zoom technology tools, in the process is more sort of desk research, and the process is using the technology, and then actually production, core people moving around. As I mentioned, concept touring also, technology involved embedded in the process of the work. So in performing art field is many ways we try to experimental different approach of making the artwork. So I don't know that there is no one way technology can contribute, but I believe the positive in the future to contribute the issue. Of course. We already have, it's almost 15 minutes overdue. So we have actually several questions about, we talked about mobility in the future, how we sort of artwork, I mean, moving around to meet international audience, but I don't think we have enough time. But let's focus about the Artivism way. So maybe just last comment, if you want to give a message, which is very important, the artist has to play important role on climate crisis. So I give you each person 1 minute. So sorry, I mean, we don't have enough time, so you can share about that. Jade, you go first.
Can you please unmute yourself? Yes, so I would like to talk on behalf of the Art Museum. So we need the audience, and of course we cannot change everything overnight, the way we do our work, which is why we need to learn from one another, as you mentioned, and the regions and countries have different circumstances, so we need to learn from one another about how we accept change and how we view change. So we need to talk about those differences and talk about collaborative system and art and partnership, everything. So everything has to come together to really make a difference. Thank you very much for your time.
And Daniel?
I think we are, you know, there are a lot of people doing things today, and we don't see them, they have no visibility. So I wish that, you know, the art world is going to be a good platform to vehicle, you know, to transport some good initiative and ideas, you know. I'm just very humble in the way I'm doing it, you know, but let's be aware and let's be careful with escapism. Don't put all your energy and your mind into the metaverse. Just be here a little bit, because in 7 years from now, it's going to be very different. So we have to act very fast. Doesn't matter if you're an artist or not. We are all very concerned about this.
Thank you. Maybe I want to close on this session with very important quotation. My colleague Jason, she's a producer. She has a presentation at Pam's salon. I read in Korean. 조효재 선생님의 탄소 사회의 종말이라는 책에서 이런 얘기를 했습니다.
So this is from the end of the Carbon
과학이 할 수
Society
없는
from
예술이 할 수
조효재.
있는 이 기후위기에
It is difficult for us to estimate the magnitude of the loss caused by climate change. Beyond the method of indiscriminately distributing a single message to the imaginary masses, it is necessary to understand human synesthesia and find a communication channel that matches the differences in various experiences. The core of the sentiment is about climate change is loss. As I said, it's difficult for us to estimate the magnitude of the loss caused by climate change, but climate activist Bill McKevin said that art can do the job. This is because artists' units of measure are sadness, anger, and hope. And he talks about the power of art. And art and activism should come together to create Artivism, and that is the essence of Artivism. Thank you very much, Ms. Jade Lim and Mr. Daniel Kapelian, for joining us today. And we will now enjoy the artist performance from Mr. Chanil titled "The Sheep Are Allowed to Roam Freely on This Land." Please stay tuned for the performance. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
So that was the performance of Chanil Jung. I hope you enjoyed the performance. So, "The sheep are allowed to roam freely on this land" was the title of the performance. And Chanil actually said that the virtual cycle of nature is broken because of mankind. And this imbalance was expressed in his performing arts. And Jung also said in the past that we cannot not create waste in life, but we can make efforts to minimize producing waste. And it is very difficult nowadays to not intervene in nature. Of course, if we cannot actually prevent this virtuous cycle from breaking, maybe we can delay this cycle from breaking. So I would like to once again thank the IMI Group as well as Chanil Jung for putting up this wonderful performance. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will move on to the showcase. So we're going to talk about the showcase 2, and I will be moderating. My name is Jung-woo Lee, editor of Art Culture for 2 Corp. Today, we're going to listen to best practices from the civil society and cultural institutions, and we have 2 speakers. First is from Festival d'Avignon of France. We have Ms. Eve Lombart, who is the administrator, and who's going to talk about sustainable strategy for sustainable performing arts for 10 minutes. We will also listen to Ms. Hyewon Lee, who is the curator at Daejeon University, and she's going to actually a professor at Daejeon University, and she's going to talk about the Climate Citizen 3.5 for 10 minutes. And after their presentations, we're going to have a Q&A session. You can also ask questions through the Art Center Nabi YouTube channel. And for those on-site participants, you can use the open chat room Making Lemonade 2.0 to ask your comments or ask questions or leave comments. Now we will move on to the first presentation by Eve Lombart.
Hello, and thank you for your invitation. I'm speaking from the Festival d'Avignon in France, and I'm glad to present you and to share with you our experience in the implementation of change in our professional practices to reduce our environmental impact. So now I'm trying to share my screen, if it's okay. To begin, let me quickly introduce to you the Festival d'Avignon and its characteristics to understand the environmental issues that arise from it. So the Festival d'Avignon takes place in south of France in July, in a city listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is one of the most important festivals of performing arts in theater and dance in Europe. It is about 45 shows, 300 performances during 3 weeks in 25 venues, and it represents 140,000 tickets sold. Its public comes from 38% around Avignon and south of France, 28% from Paris area, 23% from other areas in France, and 11% abroad. Its teams is made of 750 employees compared to 30 permanent employees the rest of the year, plus around 750 artists. The specificity of the festival is to host shows not only in theaters, but also in places not intended for the show, such as schoolyards, churches, cloisters, gardens, and gymnasiums, which means we must completely transform and equip them to welcome the public and put on shows. You can see a cloister, Célestin. Here I show you the court Saint-Joseph in the schoolyard. Here garden, Secarno, and the cloister des Carmes. The Festival d'Avignon is committed to an ecological approach since 10 years, and it has strengthened it these last years because it was itself confronted with climate change and repeated heat waves these last years. For example, in 2019, at the end of June and at the end of July, the temperatures reached 46 degrees Celsius during a period when our technical teams assembles and then dismantles the stage installations in the various venues. So it was very hard, and it made us wonder how we would be able to continue our activity and welcome the public outdoors in these extreme conditions. Now I'm going to present to you the main axes of our sustainable development strategy. First of all, the transportation, because it's the most important carbon consumption item. The Festival d'Avignon encouraged both audience and its team to use public transport and soft mobility. We communicate information in our program and on our website relating to the various transport services, how to come by train and then to use bicycle or scooters, for example. We also set up shuttles for the public to go to the remote sites of Festival d'Avignon. We have boats and we rent bicycles each year, and also electrical bikes for our employees during the festival to invite them to avoid using a car or a truck. We use cargo bikes for the transport of heavy loads in the streets of the city, reducing the number of trucks used. Concretely, we try to devote the trucks to transport of material, and people must circulate by bicycle. Then we have replaced all our gasoline vehicles by electric ones. Then to reduce our consumption and our carbon impact, we try to control our energy consumption and reduce our waste. We have started the transition of our fleet of light equipment towards LED light sources, which consume less electricity. 30% of our annual investments are devoted to it since 3 years. We have eliminated single-use plastic. There is no more plastic bottles, but only reusable bottles for the employees and artistic teams. We also use reusable cups for the bar and receptions. For that, we need to install a lot of water fountains in all our venues. This measure has made it possible to avoid the production of almost 2 tons of plastic waste. We also try to limit our printed communication, and we recycle materials as much as possible. We work on improving the insulation of our buildings and also our temporary shops to consume less energy. Finally, we work on responsible purchasing. For that, we have wrote a charter of responsible suppliers, a charter of sustainable catering providers, and a charter to the attention of the artistic teams welcome to the festival from renewable energies for different venues. Our derivative products sold in our shop are local, respecting human rights, using materials with low environmental impact, and without plastic packaging. Our receptions offer local products as often as possible without plastic packaging and with less animal proteins. To conclude this presentation of the environmental approach of the festival, I would like to share a piece of advice for the proper implementation of such a policy, because it's a global work which covers all the services of an organization. That means to clearly share the objectives with all, it is important to state them clearly as guidelines from the will of head management. Thus, we have created a team dedicated to monitoring these environmental actions, made up of employees belonging to each team's technical, administrative, communication, and artistic ones, which meets every month in order to relay the actions within its department and to report regularly on the progress of ongoing projects. Only an approach widely shared by the teams and regularly animated can lead to a change in our practices. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yes, so that was Eve Lombard, administrator of Festival d'Avignon, for her presentation. So in implementing the festival, she mentioned about what kind of sustainable strategies were used by the festival, and she mentioned about the importance of the consensus and the common goal shared by all members of the organization. Now moving on to the second presentation.
Professor Hyewon will now present. She has connected us from Daejeon University. The floor is yours. Hello everyone. I will now share my screen. Today I would like to talk about what started back in 2020. It's a campaign called Climate Citizens 3.5, and I would like to talk about the problems or challenges as well as the activities that we conduct in the context of climate change. To tell you more about this project, it is a campaign-based public art project. And as we planned this project, we were inspired by the work of sociologist Erica Chenoweth, who, based on the analysis of data on various social movements that have occurred throughout the globe for the past 100 years, showed that social change is possible when 3.5% of the population act. So the project was inspired by this work because I saw hope in Professor Erica's work. This means that even if we don't have the remainder of the population, we can still make a difference. The sea level is rising, and the 3.5, that is, well, if you look at our logo, the 3.5 is kind of pushing down the sea level. So we want to make sure that the 1.82 million people in Korea join forces in making social change. And this was the winner of ARCO Context Project. And as we prepared and planned for this project, we did have some questions that the project set out to answer. I talked about the 1.82 million people. This means that we must maximize the exposure of the project. And because of the pandemic, we could not move freely. So we had to overcome the constraints of space and manpower mobilization. And now climate change is a reality. And we cannot legitimize material consumption, which means that we need to minimize material consumption. And can art contribute to taking climate action of the citizens? I personally and frankly had some doubts as well. So these were some of the questions that we wanted to answer. Climate Citizens 3.5 has 8 sub-themes. And the themes reflect the ideas that I had for a long time For instance, urban problems and witnessing the climate crisis firsthand. And because a lot of people can't feel it, we have many problems in the agriculture sector, we have food crisis and so on. So we wanted people to experience this firsthand. So as I mentioned, it has 8 sub-themes. And the agriculture and the rural areas are more vulnerable to climate change, especially when it comes to Korea. No one can be an exception. The construction sector in Korea, the material providers, and the life cycle of building construction. We actually looked into all these areas. And this is Hongneung building. We have Kepo apartment and Tower Palace, built back in 1958. And this is real size. And as the buildings became skyscrapers, we have started to use very damaging construction materials. And as I said, this project attempted to expand its outreach. So we came up with city plates to use the screens, the outdoor screens in the city. And most of the time, you can only see advertisements of big companies. And it felt like there was no space for art or climate change. So we started to intervene in this space. And this was to justify our action as well. Can you please hold? I want to close one window. So as you can see here, we have 140 billboards, outdoor billboards in Seoul. We used most of them, and we also used the digital screens inside subway cars to expose our campaign. These are the locations that we exposed our campaigns. 30 out-of-home ads were displayed in downtown area. 219 screens in 21 subway stations were used. And we also put up ads inside 48 subway cars so that we can maximize exposure to a larger audience. And in the midst of the pandemic, we were faced with space constraints. And because of that limitation, we use the bodies of the citizens as an exhibition space as well, to make our exhibition flowing. So we used label type posters that could be attached to clothing as well as other materials. And the goal of the project was to minimize environmental impact. So the only impact that we actually created was this label type posters. And when people brought in their hats, then we would attach the labels to their hats. And because UV blockers are a major cause behind the global warming, we also carried out a campaign for wearing hats. Now, when we kicked off the project, because of the social distancing, we could only meet up to 4 persons, sometimes 10. And this is an intergenerational connection project between climate seniors and climate juniors. We had seniors make some banners, eco-friendly banners, and have juniors hang those banners. Now, the juniors, they have high awareness of climate change, but they consume a lot. And the opposite goes for the seniors. So we thought that they could learn from one another. And the seniors also need endangered species for high school students to carry them and to post them on their Instagram. And we also created coloring book of endangered plants, and this was for the children. And at the end of the day, now it was important for people to see firsthand what was happening because of the climate change. And we wanted to do so for them to realize firsthand what's happening. Because perhaps it's because they don't see it firsthand that they do not realize the seriousness of the crisis. So when it comes to pollution or damage of nature, we invited a small groups of people to go visit the sites. We also created some mobile games and applications, and Mr. Song Ho-jun, an artist that is also part of this symposium, made this, and this was to give responsibility to individuals. So there was this fun and habit-forming environment campaign, as well as the Old Man and the Sea plastic game. And we also developed an application to connect with the companion animals. We also carried out many online campaigns. One of them was this, a drawing contest for children. About 2,400 children submitted their artwork. And the UN desertification, the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, UNCCD, also participated in this campaign, and we selected the winners, and we actually published some books and translated them. And this was an online challenge as well. And we used Instagram and Twitter to make sure that people can use less and recycle more. And this was some of the videos and films that we created, and we screened them nationwide. And there was also an exhibition, and the title of the exhibition was Hope for Climate Action. And all the equipment that was used were recycled, and the proceedings as well as brochures used went either virtually, or we used recycled paper when necessary. And now, just like climate citizens, everything that's happening in the art scene looked at the topic, can we display something that is not human-centric? And it displayed some wild sheep in Korea that lost their habitat because of climate change and lost their lives. And we also displayed this structure where people could only look up and not look down. And there was some beehives that we created, and this all surrounded nature. Of course, we cannot completely move away from humans, but we tried to do so. So this project was planned many years ago, but there were some things that we could not anticipate. And one of which was that we started with six organizers and about 30 members, but then that number exploded. About 1,000 civic groups, research centers, and companies joined hands. And from kindergarten schools to the elderly, we had many citizens participating in the project. And as I said, we won the contest, and as of the end of June, the project ended. And there was a stats guy who worked on this to find out how many participated in this campaign, and about 2,300 participated in the campaign. And of course, we cannot know for sure how many became active climate citizens, but the 3.5% means 3.5% of hope. Do we have hope that exceeds 3.5%? That remains to be seen. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for the presentation, Professor Lee. Now we'll move on to the Q&A session. I would like to invite back Ms. Lombart, but Ms. Lombart could not join us because of another scheduled conflict. So now we will have a Q&A session with Ms. Lee. Well, personally, as I heard your presentation, I was quite impressed to see this project and the many numbers of campaigns that started off with Climate Citizens 3.5. And as you carried out this project, you said that you tried your best to minimize material consumption and the use of material. But then you said about the digital screens and outdoor billboards and creating games and developing applications. So maybe these consumed more energy because it was a one-time event. Well, maybe some people were concerned about that you're using more energy. So going back to minimizing material consumption, were there any standards or benchmark you tried to follow? Well, you're correct to say that. We thought that maybe doing nothing is more relevant and can maybe contribute more to fighting climate change. We should not use smartphones, we should not meet virtually for meetings, but then that's not feasible. So we had to swallow that up and carry on. In fact, overconsumption is a major cause of the climate change because creating something means using and consuming something and misusing the resource. The art museums and the billboards could have used solar panels, but then that was not always feasible. And we had some problems with insulation as well as insulation cost and time issues as well. So that could not be turned into reality. And about 20 tons of trash come out of one exhibition. So 4 trucks, 5 tons each. So I thought that when putting up an exhibition, it would be meaningful not to generate any trash. So my goal was to do our best and see the outcome. Of course, there are some art museums installing solar PVs, and they're contributing to reducing energy consumption. Yes, thank you very much for that. So sustainable art itself entails many challenges and tasks. However, still, as you embarked on this project, as you carried out this project, what was the most rewarding experience? As I engaged in Climate Citizens project, well, I was quite impressed because I've been doing this work for about 15 years. But as I said, we started as 7 organizations, but that led to 1,000 organizations in the end. And in the beginning, it was not easy to find museums to work with, but now we had Seoul City Museum that was willing to work with us with this project, and we also published some drawing books, and elementary schools are still using the books to educate their children. And I heard that last week only about 40 schools used it as a textbook. And now the high school students, well, at the beginning, about 1 or 2 high school students joined us, but then towards the later stage, they brought their entire class to join. And they also shared the project with their teachers as well in their classrooms. And as you saw from the photos, students brought the banners outdoor and shared them with others. So that was quite surprising. Yes. So the students became climate citizens themselves. And I would like to know, well, when can we actually say that we have become climate citizens for sure? Well, based on my experience, well, from long days ago, from 70s and 80s, some of my family members and my friends were quite interested in the environmental issues. But I, for whatever reason, was not quite convinced. But I started to change when I visited and tracked this Gangwon mountain, and I saw this small stream polluted. And I started to wonder, what is the source of pollution? But then that stream flew all the way down to the water resources that we drink. And well, I study art, and I thought that art was just a concept. And I failed to connect art to reality back then. But then that experience changed me, although slowly. And I started to do something that I can in my everyday life, use less plastic, or use less water, or maybe apply less sunscreens and buy less outfits. So I started with little things, and then I started to take more actions. And that's just the process of becoming climate citizens. Thank you very much, Professor. We have one more question from the audience, so I would like to give you this question. You talked about the different campaigns of Climate Citizens 3.5. What was the most effective campaign? I actually talked about that during my presentation. as I said, I'm not easily convinced by others. But, for instance, in Jeju to Paektu, we have conifers that are dying. About 34% of conifers are dying because of the global warming. And conifers survive in cold weather, so they're vulnerable to global warming. So about 10 years ago, that was witnessed in Jeju Island only, but now you can see that in Paektu-daegan as well. So in just 1 year, they started to collapse the trees. So they are, even without fire, they turn white. And that changed my perspective completely. So you have to see it firsthand, as I said before. And I brought some of the activists and movie makers and producers there. We took photos and we recorded what was happening. And recently, there was someone who called me and said, well, there was this wildfire in this area, so why don't we go back and document what is happening? And I think that they've changed as well. So I was quite grateful. Yes, thank you. As you carried out the project, many people changed, and you were able to see the change firsthand. So thank you very much for the presentation today. Thank you. Yes, thank you for your time. Thank you.
So with that, I would like to wrap up today's showcase. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And today we focused on the topic of sustainability and listened to members of the art and culture community. Tomorrow we will listen to the voices of startups and NGOs and civic society. So you can join the Art Center Nabi YouTube channel at 6 p.m. for online participants, and also the Kyoto Institute to Korea for offline institutes. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.